I think I inherited a fallen angel from my ancestors. It's almost nothing like pop culture explains, but as far as I can tell, it seems to follow an arbitrary set of rules, and seems to honor agreements. The way that I found out about this fallen angel actually took me years to piece together, so I'll start from the beginning. My sleep paralysis would come on without any warning. The only certainty was that I had never had it happen for 2 nights consecutively. It's always roughly an approximation of neon wavelengths and the crude but geometric shape of a spider, perhaps as a nod to my arachnophobia. It was jerking and skittering out of the unbroken surface of my ceiling. It would always advance closer and closer, undulating rhythmically, as if it were dancing its way towards my face. No, dancing isn't the right word. It was far more frantic, more desperate, almost as if it were struggling to get me as much as I was struggling to get away, or even scream for help. Present day, a friend of mine who happened to be a trained, nearly certified guru told me, "John, it seems like this creature means you no harm. I believe it is in fact a higher being, trying to get your attention." Well, I started. "I appreciate your advice, but I'm not sure I'm ready to believe in this kind of thing." He laughed lightheartedly and said, "John, I can tell that you are someone special, but you're too skeptical and too modest. The first time anything out of the ordinary happened to me, I was probably around 5 years old. I say probably because I don't have very many clear memories from around that age, but I do remember the night terrors. I'll get back to my sleep paralysis, but first, I should tell you that I always remember my nightmares. They started months before I was assaulted and nearly kidnapped by some insane person. I'll concede that majority of dreams are forgettable, but the same can't be said of my nightmares. I would awaken drenched in screaming, crying sorrowfully. Not a single memory of what had caused these night terrors exists in my conscious mind, aside from 2 sentences that I cried. "Please, I'm sorry," and "Don't let him get me." What little else that I can remember is always being certain that these night terrors weren't caused by nightmares. They continued, however. I have no recollection of any other words that I might have cried, up until I was 11 years old, the year that I had experienced the first death in my family. At the age of 11, my most favorite person in the world lost her battle with diabetes. It was my grandmother, whom I always called Grandma. The diabetes was the cause, but the circumstances were stranger than your typical diabetes-related death. According to my father, my brother attracted spirits into my grandma's house, and it was known by most of my relatives that my brother dabbled in the occult. Less known was the fact that my father had dabbled in the occult when he was around my brother's same age. Oh, I've gotten off track though. Maybe I'll tell you about the peculiar events surrounding Grandma's death another time. Anyway, sure, the night terrors stopped the year my grandmother had passed, but it was also the year my most memorable nightmares began. Always fallen angels chasing me, sometimes catching me. The type of hellfire and brimstone, typical red of skin, sometimes gray and usually black, white or red-eyed demons. Sometimes an army of them. I was thrust into hellscapes, fields of tormented souls, tortured by them. Their demonic forms varied, some almost human, others resembling beasts but always disgusting, always violent and supernaturally strong. After 3 years of having nightmares around 1 to 3 times a week, I had had enough. I started fighting back, strangely able to alter many aspects of my nightmares. Many times I tried, many times I had failed miserably, always losing to their demonic speed, durability, and strength, until one afternoon, weeks after my 14th birthday, I came home from school to an empty apartment. Usually my mother or father would be home by this time, greeting me on my way in. I was met by a note. It was in my mother's handwriting. I'm going to be staying the weekend at your aunt's house, and your father is going to be working until late tonight. I made dinner, but if it's cold, just reheat it in the microwave. Love you, son. See you on Monday. Nothing too unusual. At least Mom had made dinner before she left, and I was getting hungry. It had been a rough day at school, and I was more tired than hungry, so instead of chowing down on an early dinner, I decided a nap sounded lovely. I plopped on the couch and I closed my eyes. It was the strangest nap that I had ever had. I was thinking about meditation, although I had never actually done it, so I decided to just try breathing. In just a couple of minutes, my whole body felt as if it were vibrating intensely. I could see the blackness of my mind phase into a blurry picture. I heard a woman's voice, and the image began to get clearer, more stable as the vibration continued in the background. The image was that of a red-skinned, blonde-haired demoness. She had short, red-skinned, covered horns. She had addressed me by name. John, take the strength you need. Defeat your demons in combat. Our time together grows short. I exist in the mortal world, and you owe me. Her message was cut short and her image disappeared like a plume of mist, and the most unearthly sound came at me from everywhere and nowhere. A roar. I opened my eyes and I bolted upright, heart pounding, and feeling out of breath as if I had just barely made it back to the surface of a very deep swimming pool. Ever since then, my battles with the demons in my dreams never ended with me as the victim. Sometimes it was a draw, but I found that I now had the ability to turn any demonic nightmare in my favor. My battles stopped around my 18th or 19th birthday. That's when I had my first instance of sleep paralysis. Not long after the first terrifying, yet unremarkable occasion of sleep paralysis, I began to notice patches of darkness outdoors at night, as well as indoors, inside my home. At this point, it was just one thing after the other. I remember wishing that it would stop. At the age of 20, I got married. Shortly after, I was injured while doing some freelance photography. I should say re-injured, and I couldn't work or find a job that would take me on in my condition. I fell into a deep depression, of course. I was useless and I got used to being useless, which was a huge mistake. After being married and unemployed for a year, 2 jobs came and went, and then I found a stable job. At that point, it was already too late to salvage the marriage. I wasn't the best husband, in fact. My best qualities were 1. Staying faithful, 2. Not being some physically abusive drunk, 3. Having a stable job. My marriage lasted for 4 years in total, and it had nearly become the most notable nightmare thus far. I'm not here to bash exes, so I'm not going to go into details why it was such a living nightmare for me. But suffice this to say that I was the one who had walked away. 4 months of intentionally staying away from relationships, my best friend, whom I had moved in with, introduced me to a beautiful Asian friend of his. He told me, I think it'll be good for your mind and healing. Just talk with her, get to know her, and for God's sake don't rush into a relationship. Just chill and be friends. Sure, I told my friend. I'm not looking for a relationship anyway. Now I said that, and it was true. But the heart pushes you steps further than you plan taking, for good or for bad. Fast forward for a year and I decided to move to Asia to build a life with her. I'm still not perfect, but I improved leagues above the slob that I used to be, and even finished my studies so I could teach English to foreign learners. As soon as I had stepped foot in Asia, I found that my nightmares disappeared, as well as my sleep paralysis. The last thing that haunted me, the patches of full darkness present in my environment, which I only seemed to witness when I was alone. I found work at a school in a different province than my girlfriend's house, too far to commute daily, so I rented a small apartment within walking distance to the school. After taking a shower and eating a cheap dinner, I opened the door to my bathroom. As soon as I did, my attention was pulled to the bathtub, which appeared full of seething darkness, and I could feel eyes upon me. My heart started pounding like a bass drum as the darkness seemed to be growing, though it could have just been my imagination. I fumbled for the light switch, feeling the darkness inches away from my face. Finally, the lights turned on. Again, it could have been my imagination, the stress of starting a new job that I had never done before. But I could swear it was as if the darkness moved into the solid wall. I washed my face, brushed my teeth, and headed to bed. Closing the bathroom door, of course. Needless to say, I just couldn't fall asleep. I remembered some literature that I had read a while back. Something about bloodline curses. Sometimes an ancestor of yours could dabble in the occult. Maybe in earnest, or maybe as a joke. Regardless, whatever ritual they performed, occasionally would actually connect with a spirit, a demon, a jinn, or even angels. Often, they would strike a deal without discussing the cost of supernatural favor, resulting in an entity which anchors itself to your family, and by extension, to you, wrote the author. I wasn't a firm believer in any of this woo-woo type of stuff, but I was willing to try what the author had suggested. No Latin, no fancy symbols, no selling of souls, and no sacrificing of any kind. I looked up from my phone, 3 a.m. in the morning, and I was putting an end to this. I grabbed a salt shaker, sprinkled a thin line of salt all the way around my bed, and avoided letting my eyes linger on the massive swirling darkness in one of the corners outside of the salt line around my bed. I thought of how lucky I must be, that I knew quite a bit of folklore in the occult. I addressed the unseen entity, not even certain if there was such a thing, but I firmly told it to listen to me. Listen up. Whatever you are, if my ancestor made a deal with you, they did so without my consent. Now leave me and my family alone. If you mean me or anyone in my family harm, you are unwelcome within 5 kilometers of me and any of my loved ones. I felt silly, but the tension in the room was heavy. I don't know why I said what I said next, but it must have struck a nerve. You feed off of my fear, but what do I get out of this? I'm tired of this. I left the circle of salt. Yeah, I know, what an idiot. It's a dang good thing it wasn't a movie. I stepped with confidence towards the corner of the room, not stopping until I was at the edge of the darkness. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed that a street lamp outside flickered a bit, and that the light it shone through my large bedside window followed a clear path to this corner, but didn't illuminate it at all. Too late for second thoughts. I stepped into the corner, into the darkness. Yet another mistake. A wave hit me. A wave of what could only be described as an electrified blanket of countless grabbing hands. I was speechless as I recoiled and scrambled back from the corner. I collected myself and managed to force myself to look back at the corner, and the shadows were empty, the light no longer distorting near it. I wanted to sleep, but I still felt this creature's presence, merely further away than before. I recalled more literature from some professor's writings on occult theory, and addressed the entity again. Not good enough, I told it. I intended to lawyer safe negotiations between us. I do not give you permission to once. Even then, the tension had begun to fade further, and if you wish to open negotiations, you must first materialize and appear to me. But this action does not create a debt between us. After 10 seconds, regardless of what I choose, you must leave me and my loved ones alone. I hadn't mentioned this, but everyone in my family each had their own run-in with demons. Just remember that I wasn't a believer. I started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. I hadn't fully reached the count of 4, when in the middle of my room, in the very center of where my eyes were focused, it materialized in a soundless blaze of heatless flames. My eyes widened, and other than the top half being vaguely humanoid, everything else about this entity was indescribable. Listening. Its voice rasped, as if its vocal cords were made of charcoal, and it dematerialized just as quickly. I addressed it a final time. Another mistake in retrospect. If you wish to be helpful to me and my loved ones, you may stick around, but never causing physical, emotional, or spiritual harm to me or those I call my loved ones, I said with what I hoped was a respectful tone. The tension of the room cleared. No malevolent presence, no unnatural shadows. I'm not really sure what I just agreed to. I only know that I never saw shadows full of unnatural darkness again, and haven't seen nor experienced anything maliciously supernatural in 4 years. 4 years, and I haven't been afraid even once. If that entity was real, or just a stress-fueled hallucination, I couldn't honestly tell you for sure. What I can tell you, and this part is pretty strange, though perhaps more explainable, whenever that entity left, it didn't leave empty-handed. It took something from me. Not my soul or anything like that. It took away my fear. I felt it leave. After that, I found that I could no longer feel direct fear, though I could still recognize danger. My arachnophobia was gone. My fear of the dark, gone. Fear of clowns, gone. It's as if I had lost the ability to feel deeply afraid of anything. Now I can't help but wonder sometimes, did that demon or whatever it was leave me with its blessing? Did it leave me and my family for all time? Or did it silently accept my foolish offer, shackling itself to me, sticking around my family? Maybe it will occasionally be minimally helpful until the day that I die. And something else to consider. Perhaps my future grandchildren are at risk of coming into contact with it. Oh well. It's not that I'm even sure it was real in the first place. Although, if it was, I think I'll be to blame if my future children or my children's children inherit it. That, though, doesn't scare me, even if it should scare me. Update. I'm writing this to warn against those of you who might have also inherited demons. This is something everyone who has ever witnessed a demon. I know what I'm about to say may sound crazy. Sometimes I feel like crazy is all that's left. Now, it's been 1 year since my first-hand conversation with my family's demon. I thought that I had hallucinated the whole encounter. And before you ask, I wasn't on any drugs. Anyway, I confirmed my demon's existence about 2 months after my first encounter. It's safe to say that not everyone believes in fallen angels. And oftentimes, it's those who believe in them that tend to see them more often than not. I was walking to my local coffee shop, the only shop within miles or kilometers that has never burned my coffee. I was halfway across the street when I felt a claw-tipped hand close tightly on my shoulder and pull me back a step. A car roared past me, barely missing me. "Learn to drive," I shouted after the car. And that's when I heard a chuckle from just behind my left ear. "It's you. I thought I had gotten rid of you. Just, what the heck do you want?" Again, the demon laughed. "Ho ho ho. You almost died and yet you muster anger towards your deliverer. How rude." I ignored the demon and I walked up to the shop. "Hey Fred, hey Sarah. Can I get the milk is spoiled. Ask them to check it," blurted out the demon. Not wanting to look like a nut, I silently hoped I was the only one who could hear it. Can I get the usual?" "Well, make it an extra large, and do me a favor. Check the milk's expiration date." "Thanks." Fred gave me a puzzled look, but smiled and said, "Sure thing." I walked to the register, feeling the demon's steps in time with my own. I had reached for my wallet. "That'll be $3. I had just put the money on the counter when Fred came to the register and gently pushed my money back towards me. He said, "Look, Sarah, John just saved our butts," he whispered, just loud enough for the three of us to hear. "What? What happened?" Sarah asked, slightly alarmed. "The milk, it's all spoiled, and he reminded me to check." We're lucky everyone ordered soy lattes before. Thanks, John. They both thanked me and I got a handful of free coffee coupons. This was almost enough to brighten my mood. Almost, and yet, here I was being stalked by a demon. I found a secluded area in the coffee shop, put on my headphones and acted as if I were speaking with someone on my phone. Hey, thanks for saving me from getting run over. Oh, and thanks for the coffee. What can I call you? You know, besides demon. The demon appeared in the seat before me. Its form blurred and twisted below the neck, and the only features I could make out was its mostly human face. You may call me Colcifer. Your ancestor had less manners than you, John. Colcifer said with a grin. I replied, Now that you're done hiding in the shadows, what is it that you want from me? Its grin changed to a smirk. What do I want? For you to live a long and healthy life. I laughed. I couldn't help but laugh. Here I was, talking with a demon who had given me its name. And it tells me that it wants me to live a long and healthy life. Dang, that's rich. What happened to you being Mr. Scary, hides in the shadows and gives little boys a sleep paralysis? The lights in the coffee shop flickered, and the song coming from the shop's radio hissed static briefly. 2 things, Johnny boy. 1. It's Miss Colcifer. 2. I never gave you sleep paralysis. I saved you from that which causes a sleep paralysis. I was shook. What? First, you're a girl? And second, what? You mean to say you saved me from something that causes a sleep paralysis? Her form shimmered and came into focus. Apart from the red horns on her head and black eyes, she was gorgeous. Her blonde hair fell past her shoulders down to her well. She wasn't wearing any clothes. I blushed, immediately bringing my eyes to meet her gaze. Well, I mean, don't you have any clothes? I started, until I realized that this was the demoness from my dreams. The same one who had given me the power to fight demons in my nightmares. Aw, Johnny boy, you do remember me. How sweet. You were but a boy when we met. I reached out 3 more times to hint that I was still with you, but contacting you directly again would have put you in undue danger. What Colcifer was telling me, I started to remember. Within 2 years after our first encounter, my father told me about Colcifer giving him a message for me. The year after that, my cousin Brian told me of his dream, where Colcifer was sending me her regards. Wait, so that dream where I was 18. You know how teenage boys are. I replied, recounting the vaguely erotic dream that I had, encountered her in. She winked and leaned forward. Indeed. Anyway, you're a kept man now. Though sadly, that may change. Your girlfriend is in danger. Colcifer went on to explain why some demons follow certain bloodlines, attributing it to demon blood, the blood of fallen angels, flowing in the veins of certain families across the globe. She continued telling me that souls are rarely made, but in my case it was quite an old one. We were even lovers once 1,000 years before this. Demons don't usually want just any soul. They want the soul which they resonate with the most. She whispered into my left ear, now suddenly behind me. I don't know what to do with that information, I said, feeling a strange mix of disgust, curiosity, and longing. Look, will you just tell me what's going to happen to Sandy? I almost shouted, earning me a worried look from Fred and Sarah. I smiled weakly and gave them thumbs up to show them I was fine. Creatures, not unlike those I protect you from, have honed in on her soul. They have their own agenda. You see, Sandy's soul shines like an immense beacon. Colcifer went on to explain that these creatures wanted to consume Sandy's soul, and that these creatures were older than any demon, and greater than most archdemons. I guzzled my coffee, and headed home to get my car. There were a few places that I need to go, and quite a few supplies that I need to gather. Iron, silver, sea salt, chalk, rosemary, grave dust, and consecrated olive oil, After a few hours, I arrived home and with Colsifer's help, began filling a small blank book with a list of arcane and infernal spells. Wish me luck.